What if I told you that in one of the most beloved fantasy worlds, the very definition of race stretches far, far beyond what we typically imagine, like encompassing not just elves and humans, but extending to literal gods and, well, primordial spirits. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into the fascinating layers hidden within the Elder Scrolls universe. Specifically, we're unpacking the incredibly rich and often pretty complex understanding of race.
That's right. And we got a really interesting source for this one, shared by a listener, actually. It's a disambiguation page from Elder Scrolls Fandom Wiki. And it's just, well, it's a goldmine because it highlights just how many different ways this one word, race, gets interpreted across the lore. So our mission today, cut through that vastness, basically, help you navigate these distinctions and uncover the most important bits of knowledge to really grasp the fabric of this world.
Absolutely. Whether you're a seasoned adventurer, someone who's spent countless hours exploring
The
Tamriel.
continent, yeah.
Right, the main continent. Or maybe you're just curious about what makes a fantasy universe feel so immersive and unique. This deep dive should really illuminate those layers of identity and history that make the Elder Scrolls so, so compelling. So, where do we start?
Let's start where most players do, right? At the character creation screen. When you first dive into an Elder Scrolls game, probably the most accessible definition of race is right there. Bang, in front of you. Our source material kicks off by listing races by game, referencing specific titles you might have played like Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim. And it also includes other big ones in the series, Battlespire, Shadowkey, Online, Legends, Blades. Quite the list.
From a player's point of view, that game-specific list, it's fundamental. It immediately tells you, okay, what kind of character can I be in this adventure? And it often dictates your starting stats, maybe some unique abilities, even how NPCs might react to you down the line. It's really the most direct, tangible way players first engage with race in this universe. And out of all those games, a sort of core group has emerged over time, hasn't it? The source then kind of zeroes in on what most players would recognize as the 10 races of Tamriel. These are the ones you see most often, the most commonly played groups. They really form the backbone of the world as we usually experience it. We're talking about the Altmer, Argonians, Bosmer, Bretons, Dunmer, Imperials, Khajiit, Nords, Orsimer, and Redguards. The Big 10.
Exactly. And what's truly fascinating here is that these 10 aren't just like character options off a menu. They are the primary groups forming the major societies and often the core conflicts of Tamriel. Their histories are tangled up together, their cultures clash, they merge, they define the whole political landscape. And even within just these familiar 10, you start to see hints of deeper connections, deeper divisions, things that go way beyond just where they live or what they look like. They're basically the living history of the continent.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that thought. Because our source material makes it pretty clear pretty quickly that these familiar faces, they're just the start. The lore takes us much, much further to a more, well, ancient and fundamental way of categorizing these groups. So beyond just the player choices in a given game, the lore introduces this deeper, more foundational categorization. It calls it race by etymology. And this breaks down the sentient folks on Nirn, that's the planet where Tamriel is, for anyone new into 3 big groups: men, mer, and beastfolk. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. We start seeing the ancient roots defining these peoples.
Exactly. And these aren't just convenient labels someone slapped on. No, they're foundational distinctions. They shape the world's history. Men, generally, that's your human-like races, descendants of early wanderers, basically. Mer, that's the collective term for all the Elden races. It comes from Aldmer, the original, or elder, elves. And beastfolk, well, that covers the more animalistic sentient species you find across Nirn.
Okay, so thinking back to those 10 races of Tamriel we just listed, how do they fit into these older groupings? Is it a clean fit?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, actually.
Yeah.
The Bretons, Imperials, Nords, and Redguards, they all fall under the umbrella of men. Makes sense. For Mer, you've got the Altmer, Bosmer, Dunmer, and interestingly, the Orsimer, the Orcs. They're considered a type of Mer.
Ah, right. That trips some people up.
It does. And finally, the Argonians and Khajiit are your quintessential beastfolk. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, well, these etymological roots often dictate ancient rivalries, don't they? Complex alliances, the very foundations of Tamrielic society. Think about the long-standing conflicts between human and elven populations, often really bloody, across different eras. It's deeply tied to these primal distinctions,
Yeah.
rooted in creation myths, competing claims to the land. It's a powerful narrative tool the writers use.
But our journey doesn't stop just with Tamriel, does it? Our source material expands the scope quite a bit, introducing us to other races on Nirn, races that exist beyond the familiar continent. And this really shows a world far more diverse than just the ones we usually bump into in the main games. Well, it's astounding, the variety.
It truly is. And these other races, they're not just like footnotes or curiosities. They fundamentally challenge our perception of what a typical inhabitant of this world looks like. And they hint at a much larger, more ancient, sometimes darker history for Nirn. Take the Dwemer, for instance.
Ah, yes, the dwarves.
Or deep elves.
Right, famously known as the Deep Elves or dwarves. Their enigmatic disappearance isn't just some historical event. It's like a profound cultural trauma for the remaining elven races, and a source of endless speculation that still shapes magic and technology across Tamriel today. Then you have the Falmer, the Snow Elves.
Another tragic one, very tragic. Once this proud, beautiful elven race. Now, well, degenerated into these subterranean creatures, blind, aggressive. Their fall is just a stark reminder of corruption, betrayal, isolation, what that can do. We also see the Maormer, the Sea Elves, often shown as fierce pirates, raiders from beyond Tamriel's shores. They add this constant external threat, and, oh, let's not forget the Slowed.
The Slug Folk. Always found them unsettling.
Right, amphibious, slug-like creatures known for their necromancy, their unsettling intellect. They represent something truly alien, morally ambiguous maybe. In the Elder Scrolls cosmos, each of these groups, even the ones you rarely actually see in-game, they contribute to the depth and the mystery of it all.
So it's not just about padding out a list with more names. These examples actively deepen the lore. They give context for so many in-game things, historical footnotes you might read in a book somewhere.
Exactly right. They hint at vast empires long gone, forgotten, unique adaptations to really extreme environments, and just the constant flux of power and, well, evolution across Nirn.
Okay, if you thought that was detailed, hold on, because the rabbit hole goes deeper. Our source material, it acknowledges the incredible granularity of Elder Scrolls lore. It breaks down humans, Mer, and Beastfolk into even more specific subcategories. So, what does this level of detail really tell us? Is it just trivia at this point?
Well, I don't think it's just trivia. It tells us the lore designers really thought about lineage, about origins. Under humans, for example, the list expands way beyond the Tamrielic groups we know. It includes ancient peoples like the Akaviri, the Atmerans, who are the ancestral Nords from way up north, from Atmora and the Needs. They were the sort of primordial human inhabitants of Tamriel. This detail, it just demonstrates the huge ancient lineage of humanity across Nirn, hints at forgotten civilizations, massive migrations, the incredibly diverse origins before the big empires we know.
And the Mer, the elven lineage, I'm guessing that's even more complex given their long history and all the splits and schisms?
Oh, absolutely. The Mer lineage is incredibly extensive. It branches out from the original Aldmer into so many distinct groups. Our source details not just the Altmer and Bosmer, but crucial historical groups like the Aelides.
The Heartland High Elves.
Right.
With the big white towers you see ruins of.
Exactly. Their sophisticated, though often tyrannical, civilization ultimately fell, left behind those magnificent ruins all over Cyrodiil. And we see the Chimer listed. They were the precursors to the Dunmer, the Dark Elves, transformed into their, ash-skinned appearance by a divine curse, which is just a profound example of how belief, how divine intervention can physically and permanently change a race in this world. This level of detail really emphasizes that elven history isn't just one story. It's a whole tapestry. Evolution, splintering, often really tragic transformations.
And the Beastfolk category. From what I recall, that showcases just as much wild diversity, maybe even more. What does our material highlight there?
Indeed, the Beastfolk are incredibly varied. The source lists not only the well-known Argonians and Khajiit, but groups like the Imgeti.
The ape people?
Yeah, the ape-like people who strangely revere the Altmer, the Lamia, who are serpentine humanoids, and the Slowed, again, those unique slug-like sorcerers. And this isn't just a random grouping. Each of these names represents unique ecological niches, distinct cultures. You've got aquatic beings, land dwellers, humanoids with fascinating animal traits. It just highlights a truly imaginative biological diversity within the world. It's not just humans and elves with pointy ears.
I also see our source revisits the Akaviri, lists them as a distinct racial category on their own, then breaks them down into groups like the Ka Po Tun, the Kamal, the Tang Mo, and the Sissi. These are definitely less common knowledge for most players, but they've had pretty significant impacts on Tamriel's history, right?
Precisely. The Akaviri are fascinating, partly because they're from a different continent, Akavir. Their interactions with Tamriel are often mysterious, often adversarial. The Seishi, for example, they're depicted as a vampiric serpent folk. They actually invaded Tamriel once, even ruled parts of it for a time, left a lasting legacy.
Yeah.
Their unique identities are really crucial if you want to understand the external threats, the cultural influences that have shaped Tamriel over millennia. And beyond even them, the source points out additional unique groups. Like dragons, definitely a distinct category. Giants, minotaurs, all listed as separate, powerful, or just distinct entities. It further complicates that definition of race in a really compelling way.
This does raise an important question, though. With all this, incredibly intricate detail, how does it genuinely enrich our understanding of the Elder Scrolls world? Does it go beyond just being a long list of names for lore buffs?
Oh, I think it absolutely does. It's simple, really. This detailed categorization. It isn't just a dry list. It builds this incredibly rich tapestry. History, evolution, diverse life forms. It makes the world feel properly ancient, properly lived in. Each entry, even the obscure ones, hints at its own lore, its own conflicts, its own place in the grand scheme of Nirn. It moves us beyond simple stereotypes to a world that feels deeply complex, interconnected, and constantly evolving. It tells us that basically every corner of this universe, no matter how obscure, has a story tied to its inhabitants.
All right, so you might be thinking, okay, we've covered elves, humans, beastfolk, even giant slugs and serpent people. What could possibly be left in this definition of race? Well, our source material takes us on one final, truly cosmic leap. It introduces us to the last and maybe the most surprising category listed, Etata. The Etata, yeah, this refers to the original spirits, essentially the Adric and Daedric ancestors. So this category encompasses the most fundamental divine beings of the Elder Scrolls universe. And our material breaks them down into subcategories, the Aedra, the Daedra, the Elmafey, and the Magna Ge. So to briefly define each, the Aedra are often seen as the divine beings linked to creation, the natural order of Nirn, though their benevolence is sometimes debated given the sacrifices they made during creation. It wasn't painless.
Right, the ones who kind of became part of the world itself.
Exactly. The Daedra, on the other hand, may be better understood not as simply evil, though many certainly seem that way to mortals, but more as beings embodying fundamental principles, like change, destruction, knowledge, madness. And these principles often clash with mortal well-being, making them powerful, often capricious forces operating from their realms in Oblivion. Then the Elmafey, known as the Earthbones. Primordial spirits from which mortals and the world itself are descended. They're like the building blocks of reality almost. And finally, the Magna Ge. These are celestial beings who actually fled creation before it was finished. They left behind the stars as, like, tiers or pathways from their escape.
Okay, hold on. Let me get this straight. Even cosmic entities like these are considered races in this universe. Doesn't calling divine beings like Aedra and Daedra races, doesn't that dilute the concept of race we've been talking about for mortals? Or maybe it offers a uniquely Elder Scrolls perspective on just, well, intrinsic being.
That's a really profound question. And yeah, I think it's necessary to ask. It absolutely elevates the concept beyond mere biology or even cultural lineage, way beyond. The philosophical implication here is pretty huge, is that in the Elder Scrolls, the very fabric of existence, from the smallest mortal races up to the fundamental forces of creation and destruction, can be understood through this lens, the lens of distinct primordial races. This makes their classification really potent, I think. It implies intrinsic motivations, cosmic purpose, fundamental types of being, not just moral choices or physical forms. It suggests that identity in this universe isn't just about where you come from, but what you are, at a foundational, almost elemental level. It's a truly holistic approach to identity.
Wow, what a journey we've just taken. We started off just wondering what race truly means in the Elder Scrolls, and you, our listener, have now navigated this really fascinating path. From playable characters and familiar faces, all the way to the deepest etymological roots, the diverse creatures of Nirn, and even ending up with primordial deities and cosmic forces. It's quite a scope.
It really is. And by understanding these layers, these layered definitions, from game mechanics to ancient etymological roots, from Tamriel's varied inhabitants right up to the cosmic Etata, you really do gain a much richer, more nuanced appreciation for the sheer depth and complexity of this incredible fantasy world. Which naturally raises an important question, doesn't it? When a world categorizes everything, from the smallest beastfolk to the mightiest gods, as races, what does that tell us about the fundamental nature of identity, of belonging within that universe? And maybe more interestingly, how might that challenge our own definitions, our own ideas about what truly constitutes a race, or even just a being?
That is a truly thought-provoking question, something to definitely ponder long after this deep dive ends. We really hope this exploration has given you plenty to consider and maybe illuminated just how incredibly detailed and, well, thoughtful the lore of the Elder Scrolls truly is. Keep exploring these fascinating distinctions and the absolutely endless stories they unveil.